Well, Nittany Nation Game Day is back and better than ever. I'm Andrew Clay, and the first order of business is this week's preseason preview special. It's another new era for Penn State's offense. Mike Yurcich is the new sheriff in town, and if history repeats itself, the Nittany Lions could be in for a big season. Well, Penn State running back room, it turned heads last year amidst injuries and inexperience. That group, even deeper and better than ever this fall. And the return of Penn State football is big business for many across the state. How State College is embracing what it lost a year ago. The countdown, the kickoff reads 1 week, and it's time to set the table on this year's all-new Nittany Nation Game Day. Our season preview kicks off now.
Welcome to the Nittany Nation preseason special.
We need to be shooting on all cylinders, come week one.
We prepare like no other in the country, and as long as we keep on track doing that, sticking to the motto, going 1-0 every single week, we should be just fine.
I'm not going to deny what happened last season, but I'm also not going to harp on it. This is 2021, guys.
The team's really excited. It's going to bring a lot of juice, and we're just really, really happy to be back in full capacity.
It's a new season of Penn State football and a new year here on Nittany Nation. I am Andrew Clay. She is Andrew Lee Penwell, and we are both excited to be your Nittany Nation host throughout the season. Our work begins today as we preview the upcoming season.
Let's pretend 2020 didn't happen.
Okay.
And if we did, well, everyone wants that. Penn State may have been the favorite in the Big Ten and even maybe competed for a New Year's Six spot if 2020 didn't happen. Some of you, please look away. This might be incredibly painful. And
hide the children.
An 0-5 start that Sandy Barber called disturbing. Penn State lost to Indiana for just the second time ever. Ohio State, Maryland, and even Nebraska got Penn State. It wasn't pretty, but Michigan is always around the corner. A 27-17 win against the Wolverines kicked off a strong finish for Penn State, who won the Final Four, skipped a bowl, and went into the offseason.
Yeah, the biggest change since we last saw a Penn State game is the hiring of offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich. A bit of a ringer in some regards, as James Franklin has long awaited to work with Yurcich. Now, Yurcich spent 2020 with Texas and Ohio State in 2019, Oklahoma State before that. The book on him, a high-paced offense with big production. After all, the Big 12 is known for 500-yard games and tons of fireworks. Yurcich has coached some elite college quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph, Justin Fields, and Sam Ellinger. You may also know the names like Blake Jarwin, James Washington, and Tyreek Hill.
Just that name.
That's a name that's pretty good. Take a look at how his offenses have stacked up. He joined OK State back in 2013. Yurcich coached offenses have averaged nearly 40 points per game, 425 yards per game, and I'm impressed by how balanced this is, honestly. 315 yards passing, 182 yards rushing per game under Mike Yurcich. I know some will knock the Big 12 defenses here, but Yurcich's most productive season actually came while he was at Ohio State. You can't knock the Big Ten defenses.
Can't knock that. Yurcich will heavily be judged on his ability to get the most out of quarterback Sean Clifford. But when you look at the numbers, Clifford didn't necessarily take a big a step backwards as it may have felt at last. His completion percentages was up, his yards and scoring took a bit of a hit. He ran into turnovers and sacks, and the offense struggled to find its feet. But the senior?
Sean Clifford is going to be the best quarterback in all of college football. Just the way he prepared. He's the first one in, last one out, and he takes his job very seriously. And especially we got a chip on the shoulder this year, so he definitely came out with a chip on his shoulder this camp, and I feel like you guys are going to see what he does this year.
Sean is all about helping this team win. He's willing to do whatever it takes. So therefore, you got to try to help him. You have to guide him and help him get where he wants to be, and that's he wants to be great. So whatever that takes.
Well, that was senior safety Jaquan Brister and their offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich there with those high praises. Now, this is Sean Clifford's offense. I'll get into this later with Neil Riddell, but last year Will Levis competed for the starting job. He's at Kentucky now, and honestly, nobody even knows who the QB2 is right now. James Franklin actually wouldn't say earlier this week.
And off the field of play, a lot is going on in the football world. This week, the Big Ten, ACC, and Pac-12 announced an alliance between the three conferences. This comes on the heels of Texas and Oklahoma jumping ship to the SEC. While the commissioners of the leagues offered a little in terms of solid plans, they said this agreement is based on an appreciation of athletics and core values like academics, diversity. Cooperation is really what this whole thing boils down to. Theoretically, this could be a scheduling and stability move for the conferences. Former Penn State receiver Joe Nastasi thinks the move will eventually lead to the formation of regional super conferences, similar to the AFC and the NFC in the NFL, and the conferences could mirror the NFL's division structure.
I think that it's going to give the ability of the schools to set up schedules the way they want them, and I think it's going to require them to play games like we're going to play this weekend with Wisconsin game. I think it's going to make you play better opponents all the time.
Anastasi is one of our guests on the Nittany Nation Overtime with the Nitwits.
Yeah, that preview show coming up on Sunday. Now, Penn State may be off, but the Big Ten is actually not off this weekend. We actually have our first college football games. Nebraska will be playing Illinois in the first Big Ten football game of the season. It's Brett Bielema's debut with the Fighting Illini in his return to the conference. Well, when we come back, we'll dive into Penn State's deep stable at running back and why one player says his film last year actually embarrassed him.
How do you think he looked breaking away?
Slow.
You're watching the Nittany Nation season preview special. You're home for Nittany Lion football.
You're watching the Nittany Nation preseason special.
Well, let's rewind the clock back to 2014, folks. The Croke Park Classic in Ireland. Penn State beating Central Florida 26-24, a game in which Christian Hackenberg threw for 454 yards, setting the Penn State single-game passing record. Penn State doubling up the night's offensive output, but needed that walk-off field goal from Sam Ficken, the 36-yarder, to win that game. That's this week's moment in Penn State sports. Well, last year, Penn State's running back room took a major hit when Journey Brown was forced to retire from football with a heart condition. Injuries left that position group in tatters most of the year, but not all was lost, Anderly.
Penn State's backs picked up the slack, and a couple freshmen played incredibly well last season. At the end of the year, Kayvon Lee was Penn State's leading back, 450 yards, 4 touchdowns for the freshman. Most of the work coming in the final 4 weeks, as Lee took over the lead role with injuries to Devin Ford and Noah Cain. But Lee was unsatisfied with last year, joking about how he was slow and he looked slow on tape. He says he took a big step forward this fall.
Like, I wouldn't say I was slower last year. I just wasn't comfortable. Like, I always was happy with getting the 4-5 yards. So
what do you think of yourself when you see film and you're breaking free and the way you were running last year?
I was like, I can't do that again. That can't be me.
Did you look? How do you think you looked breaking away?
Slow.
Penn State's backs healthy now, though, with Noah Cain, Devin Ford back. Penn State also adds Baylor transfer John Lovett. Look at what this guy has done in Baylor. 1,800 yards, most of which came in his first 3 seasons. 17 rushing touchdowns. James Franklin talked about wanting a 3 running back rotation. It's hard to figure out which 3 running backs, though, actually lead this pack. Now, on defense, Penn State always has that marquee linebacker in this season. It's Jesse Luketa, the senior out of Canada, is working at some defensive end as well, taking on a pass rushing specialty role. Not all that different to how we saw the Nittany Lions use Micah Parsons in the past. Now, Luketa finished second on the team in tackles last season with 59, and he had 2.5 sacks.
I've always been a versatile guy. I've always felt as if, there's more for me to tap into. The conversation with me and Coach Pride, just me really tapping into my full potential. So, being able to go out there and display my versatility is something I'm really excited for.
Now, let's take a quick look at the defense, a quick snapshot. That is, Penn State allowed a lot of points last year, but when you run the numbers, look at the season averages. From 2016 through 2019, when Brent Pry took over as a full-time defensive coordinator, opponents, total yards, passing yards, rushing yards, all actually down in 2020, despite teams scoring nearly a touchdown more per game. Well, off the field, Penn State's return means big things for many local communities.
Bars where people watch the games, clothing stores where you get that merch, hotels, rentals, travel, but no community is impacted greater than State College. Our Peyton Kennedy is in Happy Valley, where businesses eagerly await the return of fans.
The return of college football is everything to local businesses, especially as many are still working to recover from the losses of 2020, with creative, all-new events and even stepping up to fill some employment gaps.
Penn State football is the largest economic driver for State College.
Last year was a difficult year for us with COVID. With the restrictions that were happening throughout Pennsylvania.
The Field Burger and Tap knows the impact football has on business. Their connection to the game goes a step further. They say Coach James Franklin is a frequent customer with football recruits and even has his own burger on the menu.
Football weekends are always positive for us, so we expect more of the same with maybe just a little bit more growth. I think people are a little tired of sitting home and they want to get out.
To bring in more customers and revenue, they're hosting the first ever Field Fest on September 10th with headliner DJ Pauly D.
We wanted to welcome the football fans back, and it's the first home game, so we thought take that Friday afternoon and really offer a great entertainment venue.
I'm told they've sold several hundred tickets so far. General admission tickets at $30, VIP $100. Downtown, Federal Tap House can now host up to 400 people.
Revenues are up and we're able to create more jobs, so we're very happy.
However, filling the jobs has been a challenge.
Yeah, we're definitely shorter staff than we've ever been, so we've just made a little adjustment to our hours.
General Manager Jessica Wargo says she's had to step in, working in the kitchen while they're understaffed. She's hopeful the return of Penn State students and faculty will help fill positions and seats.
We're very excited to have everybody back and be back into full staff and working again.
Last year, a study by the Happy Valley Adventure Bureau estimated that having no fans in these stands could result in about $70 to $80 million in financial losses. In University Park, Peyton Kennedy, Nittany Nation.
Some Penn State NFL news. Stefan Wisniewski retiring after 10 seasons in the NFL this week. The offensive lineman spent 4 seasons with Oakland, another 3 with Philadelphia, but bebopped around the league since, raising that Lombardi trophy back in 2018. And Ravens quarterback Trace McSorley back working out in Baltimore. He hurt his back at home right before the preseason opener. Jim Harbaugh said this week McSorley may be available for week 1, but would not commit to it. Well, coming up, we take a look at the Nittany Lions season with Neil Riddell.
Some of you know him as a nitwit. He's a writer for the Altoona Mirror. He'll join us when Nittany Nation Game Day returns.
You're watching the Nittany Nation preseason special.
Well, we're back here now with Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror and Nittany Nation Overtime, and you can actually check out their preview show. That's coming up tomorrow night. Now, Neil, here we are 1 week away from kickoff against Wisconsin. I know we're all circling that game out there in Madison, but if we look beyond that game, what's one game that has your eye?
Well, I mean, the whole road schedule really with Ohio State and Iowa, and I think Maryland's going to be improved. But, Auburn, it's going to be a whiteout game at night. I think people will be measuring that. But I would not look past Ball State. It's a pretty decent team that returns a veteran quarterback, and they won 10 or 11 games last year.
Penn State fans do not want to hear about keep your eye on Ball State.
I know.
Well, who is one player you think is going to take a big step forward this year for the Nittany Lions?
Everybody's kind of pointing at Brandon Smith on defense. He's really an excellent one-on-one tackler, and he hasn't necessarily been in a featured role, but I think he's a guy that there's a lot of high hopes for even at the next level. He's been kind of groomed by Micah Parsons. So on defense, I would say him, and on offense, I was happy to see Jahan Dotson, come back after a really good year last year, but maybe he didn't have quite the numbers that the NFL looks for.
Yeah, that catch though, the one that everyone remembers, the one-handed catch. I asked him during media day how many times people have talked to him about that. He said that's all they want to talk about is that incredible catch. Now, a lot of younger players played last year, whether because of injuries or whatever. There were a lot of freshmen that played. Do you expect to see fruits from that experience this year?
Well, you know, when you come out 0-5 and you do play a lot of people, that has to be an upside. I would think so. You know, a lot of you look at Fryermuth had a great catch last week, but the tight ends behind him, I think, are pretty good players, but maybe didn't get quite the opportunity.
We are with Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror and Nittany Nation Overtime, of course. Don't forget again to watch their preview show coming up tomorrow night. Neil, at one point last year, Sean Clifford was fighting for his job. Now, Will Levis and his whole banana eating thing, I don't know if you saw that. That's a story for a different day. He eats the whole banana, including the peel, folks. Anyways, he is gone now. Is this Sean Clifford's job undisputedly?
Oh, it better be. I mean, they don't have anybody who's taken a live snap, a meaningful snap behind him. You know, I didn't think Levis really got a fair shot. I'm real curious to see what he's going to do at Kentucky. But you know, the bananas aside.
What a story that is.
Yeah, but I think he was you know, he didn't get to show his arm and what he could do at times. But I thought he was a leader. This is now, for sure, it has to be Clifford's. You know, he has more pressure on him than most players in college football because they really need him. They don't have a backup.
Yeah, Will Levis is officially the starter now for Kentucky. If we look forward even more into this, let's reach into the prognostication bag here. What is one certainty you can give me about this upcoming season?
Well, it's going to have a lot more excitement. I mean, this is a program that really feeds off the fans. James Franklin is that kind of coach. When things go well, he's in the middle of a lot of positive energy. And I think it should be, the fun should be back to Penn State football, whereas last year it was so empty.
And as we continue this interview here with the Altoona Mirror's Neil Riddell and Nittany Nation Overtime, Neil, Vegas has Penn State at, I think, 9 wins. That's the win total. Are you taking the over or the under?
You know, I think I'm going to have to take the under. I mean, I don't want to be a wet blanket real early, but I think 9 is, you know, probably 9-3 would be a little bit more optimistic. 8-4. Again, the road schedule is really hard, and you know, Maryland now thinks that they probably could. They've just beaten Penn State. They were up 35-7 on them, so I think everybody else has a reason to think that they can compete. I realize Penn State did not, you know, kind of had their hearts torn out early at Indiana, didn't respond well. But I just see to be able to come back to 9-3, certainly if they could be better than that, that would be a major turnaround. But I think probably 8-4, 9-3 is right around. I mean, the guys in Vegas know what they're doing.
That is true. It's amazing how accurate.
I saw 8.5 at
8.5. Okay. Well, it's amazing.
That forces you to make a decision.
That does. It does. Last question for you, Neil. What is the biggest question we have left now heading into opening week?
Well, I would say, you know, beyond the off the field of how is everybody going to navigate COVID, I still think it's quarterback play. I think can Sean Clifford make that major turnaround? He started to play better toward the second half of last season, but I think that would be the #1 question mark to me. Yeah, all eyes on Sean Clifford and the Penn State Nittany Lions next week as they head to Wisconsin. Neil, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks you very much. Okay, when we come back, Anderly back on set as we put a bow on this. You're watching the Nittany Nation Game Day Preview Show. Your home for Penn State football.
You're watching the Nittany Nation Preseason Special.
Well, around campus this week, both men's and women's soccer in action. The Lady Lions hosting Hofstra tomorrow. Penn State already 2-0 on the season, while the men play host to Syracuse on Sunday night. Can't make it to Jeffrey Field. Both games will air on the Big Ten Network Plus. Well, Anderly, it wouldn't be a preview show or preseason show without getting into some keys to talk about. So let's quickly hit on our keys to the season.
Well, I'll start things off. It will be start fast. That won't be easy. Wisconsin nor Auburn are guarantees, and Ball State is far better of a team than most fans know. I'll also say that Penn State has to be sure to shore up that offensive play. There's NFL talent there, but it certainly is a weakness a season ago. Yeah, protect Sean Clifford. And Anderly, I'll add this. Penn State's defense overall was pretty good a year ago, but the red zone defense gave up a touchdown
on 25 of 28 red zone attempts. It has to be better. Well, a quick preview looking at Wisconsin. Obviously, we'll get into this more next week, but this is James Franklin's first trip to Camp Randall. Anderle, you're from Madison. What can you expect?
Madison is one of the best environments in college football. I'm sure, and I know actually, the fans are stoked to have a really awesome first normal game back at Camp Randall. Expect a lot of noise and energy.
Remember, Penn State and Wisconsin opening up in Madison, a noon kickoff here on the East. Brunch time on the road. We'll air this one, or week one will air over on Fox Sports. Well, that will do it here on Nittany Nation, the preview special. Next week, we move into our typical game day routine where we'll get you set for Penn State and Wisconsin football. The season is here, folks. For Anderle Penwell, I'm Andrew Clay. We'll see you next week.